When people look at our family from the outside, they saw nothing but perfection. My father, David, was known in our neighborhood as a hardworking, quiet man who carried the weight of responsibility with pride. He was the kind of man who woke up early, left for work before sunrise, and always made sure our home was secure. My mother, Laura, was the opposite in many ways. Where my father was serious and calm, she was warm, talkative, and full of energy. To anyone who visited, our home felt alive because of her laughter, her welcoming nature, and the way she made even strangers feel like family. As their daughter, I thought I had everything: stability, love, and a household that other people envied, but perfection has cracks you only notice when you're close enough to see the details. It was during my second year in college when I began to notice those cracks. They weren't obvious at first, just little things that didn't seem important at the time. My mom started dressing differently, more carefully, as if she were preparing for an audience that wasn't just family. My father would compliment her, but her smile didn't linger long with him. Instead, it felt like her attention was drifting elsewhere, though I couldn't yet name where. Michael had always been a family friend, the kind of person who blended so naturally into our lives that his presence was never questioned. He worked with my father years ago, and even after their professional lives split, he remained close. He came over for dinners, birthdays, and casual weekends, often bringing small gifts or helping out with odd chores around the house. To me, he was like an uncle, familiar, safe, and trustworthy. But as months passed, I began to feel something about his presence that didn't match the innocence of friendship. There were moments when I'd noticed the way my mother laughed at his jokes, laughter that seemed louder and warmer than the kind she shared with my father. Sometimes her eyes lingered on him a second too long, as if their conversation carried a private meaning I wasn't supposed to catch. Once, when Michael arrived unexpectedly, I saw my mom quickly adjust her hair in the mirror before greeting him at the door. It was a small gesture, but it planted a thought in my mind I tried hard to dismiss: that I didn't want to be suspicious. I loved my mom too much, and I respected her enough to believe she would never cross certain lines. So I told myself these were coincidences, tricks of perception. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, wasn't my dad always relaxed around Michael? If he didn't see a problem, why should I? Yet, the unease kept returning in subtle ways. One evening, we were sitting in the living room when my mom's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting for the briefest second before she quickly flipped the phone over. My father asked who it was, and she casually said it was just one of her friends from a community group. But when she left the room, I saw her smile quietly while typing, her fingers moving faster than usual, her face lit in a way I couldn't explain. That it wasn't only the phone. There were nights when she stayed in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed, claiming she was just finishing some cleaning. I would hear faint sounds of laughter, soft murmurs, and then silence when footsteps approached. When I walked in, she would look startled, as if I had interrupted something. But there was no one there, at least, not visibly. The tension grew sharper at gatherings. Michael seemed to know little details about my mom's day that she hadn't shared with me or my dad. Once, he mentioned a new dress she had bought before she wore it in front of us. Another time, he brought her favorite dessert from a bakery across town, the kind of detail you'd expect from a spouse, not a family friend. And every time my father looked away, their eyes met with a quiet familiarity that made me feel like an outsider in my own home. That I remember one Sunday afternoon vividly. Michael made a joke at the table, something ordinary about the weather, but my mom laughed until her eyes watered. My dad smiled politely but seemed disconnected, as if he was watching a show he didn't fully understand. I sat there with my fork frozen, studying the way my mom leaned forward, the way Michael's hand brushed hers when he reached for a dish. It was subtle, yet undeniable. Something unspoken passed between them, something no one else acknowledged. That I didn't have proof, only impressions, but the weight of suspicion pressed down on me harder every day. I wanted to talk to my dad, to share what I saw, but I feared breaking his trust if I was wrong. And I couldn't confront my mom because the thought of her denying it, or worse, confirming it, was unbearable. So I kept everything inside, quietly collecting fragments of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. Still, deep down, I knew. Families don't unravel all at once. It starts with little moments, stolen glances, secrets hidden behind laughter. And I was beginning to realize that my mom was carrying a truth she didn't want us to know, a truth that had the power to change everything. Word count 768, white heavy check mark. Would you like me to continue straight into section 2, 760 words, the discovery and shocking confession, in the same style? The night that changed everything didn't arrive with warning. It came disguised as ordinary, with dinner plates still on the table and my father half asleep on the couch after a long day. I had gone upstairs to finish some reading, but sometime after midnight I heard faint voices drifting through the quiet. At first I thought maybe the television was left on, but the tones were softer, secretive. I followed the sound, careful with every step, until I realized it wasn't the TV at all. It was my mother's voice, joined by another one I knew instantly, Michael's. They were in the kitchen, speaking in whispers that carried enough weight to freeze me in place. I couldn't catch everything, only fragments. Words like, "We can't keep hiding this," and "I wish things were different." My mother's voice trembled when she said, "No one can ever find out, not yet." Those words lodged into me like a knife. Suddenly, the unease I had been ignoring became real. There was no denying it anymore. I stood there, torn between confronting them and running back upstairs. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they would hear it. But I stayed silent, my back pressed against the wall, holding on to every word I could catch. When their voices dropped even lower, I couldn't hear clearly, but I knew enough. My mother wasn't just hiding something, she was hiding a betrayal that reached into the very heart of our family. The next day, I looked at her differently. Every smile, every touch she gave my father felt rehearsed. I wanted to scream at her, ask her how she could sit at the same table with us while keeping such a secret. But fear silenced me. Fear that saying it aloud would break us apart faster than I was ready to accept. Then came the announcement. My mother gathered us in the living room one evening, her expression serious, almost rehearsed. My father looked confused, asking if everything was all right, expecting perhaps news about finances or a family trip. Instead, she took a deep breath and said she had been keeping something from us. My chest tightened. I knew what was coming, but hearing it aloud still shattered me. She confessed that she had been unhappy for years, that despite the picture we all saw, she felt something was missing in her marriage. My father interrupted, telling her they could work through anything, that no problem was too big if they faced it together. But she shook her head, tears welling in her eyes, and admitted the words I prayed I wouldn't hear. She had been seeing Michael, not as a friend, but as something more. The silence that followed was unbearable. My father's face went pale, his lips parted but no words came out. I felt my stomach twist as if the ground beneath me had collapsed. Michael's name hung in the air like poison, tainting everything that once felt pure in our home. But it wasn't just the affair. My mother went further, delivering the kind of blow no one expects from the person meant to protect a family. She said she wanted to leave, that she had found happiness with Michael, and she couldn't pretend anymore. Her voice was steady, almost calm, as though she had already prepared herself for the destruction her words would cause. My father tried to speak, but his voice broke. He asked how long, his question filled with disbelief. My mother admitted it had been months, maybe longer than he wanted to know. He turned away, his hand pressed against his face, a man stripped of everything he thought he could rely on. I sat frozen, anger boiling inside me but unable to escape a sound. I wanted to demand answers, to tell her she had destroyed not just her marriage but our entire family. Instead, I watched as she justified herself, saying she deserved to be happy, that she had sacrificed too much of herself over the years. Every word felt like another knife, carving away at the image of the mother I once trusted. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My father's silence, my mother's confession, my own disbelief, all collided in that moment. Nothing about our lives would ever return to the way it was. The surprise she gave us that night wasn't just her truth, it was a weapon that shattered the foundation of our family. I realized then that secrets don't just live in silence. They grow, they wait, and when they finally come out, they don't just reveal the truth, they destroy everything around them. Word count 764, white heavy check mark. Do you want me to move on and write section 3, minimum 760 words, aftermath and irreversible change, in the same direct, faceless style? The days after my mother's confession were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Our house, once filled with familiar sounds and easy routines, became unbearably quiet. My father barely spoke, his silence heavier than any argument could have been. He moved through the house like a shadow, present but unreachable, as though something inside him had shut down. I would hear him in the middle of the night, pacing the hallway, his footsteps restless and uneven. But when morning came, he carried himself as if he wanted to hide the brokenness behind his eyes. My relationship with my mother fractured almost immediately. She tried to talk to me, tried to explain her choices, saying she still loved me, that nothing about her being my mother had changed. But to me, everything had changed. I couldn't look at her without seeing betrayal. I couldn't listen to her voice without remembering the way she calmly admitted to tearing our family apart. She insisted that she didn't mean to hurt us, that she had simply chosen her happiness after years of sacrifice. But to me, it sounded selfish, as if her happiness was worth more than the stability of the family she helped build. Michael became a permanent figure almost overnight. I saw him outside the house once, waiting for her in his car, and the sight alone made my stomach turn. It was one thing to know what had happened, but another to watch the man who once felt like family stand there as if he had the right to take her away. My father couldn't bear it. The moment he realized she wasn't coming back, he started preparing for divorce. It wasn't a dramatic decision, but a quiet one, the kind you make when you've run out of ways to fight for something already lost. Holidays came and felt empty. Where there had once been laughter, stories, and inside jokes, there was only silence or forced small talk. I dreaded the gatherings because they made the absence more obvious. My father and I spent Christmas at home that year, just the two of us, eating in silence, pretending it was enough. It wasn't. Everything felt hollow. I struggled most with trust. The woman I had trusted the most, the person I thought would never betray me, had shown me how easily people could hide their truth. I found myself pulling back from friends, avoiding their homes, refusing invitations, worried I would see Michael with her or worse, see them together looking like a real couple. It was easier to stay away than to risk watching the new life she had chosen. She told me repeatedly that I should try to understand her, that one day I would see she only did what she thought was best for herself. But I couldn't accept it. I didn't want to understand. All I could see was the destruction she left behind. My father, once steady and confident, now looked older, smaller, like the weight of betrayal had carved years into his face. And I, caught between them, felt like I was standing on a line that didn't exist anymore, forced to choose but unwilling to take a side. Time didn't heal the wounds, it only reminded us of them. Every milestone carried the shadow of her absence. Birthdays felt incomplete. Family photos stopped happening. Even casual dinners were never the same, because there was always an empty chair, a missing laugh, a reminder of what had been stolen from us. Eventually, my father signed the divorce papers. He didn't celebrate it, he didn't even announce it. He simply handed me the news in the quietest voice, as though he couldn't bear to make it louder than a whisper. It was final. My mother belonged to another life now, one that excluded the family she had built. I tried to forgive her, but forgiveness requires understanding, and I had none. I asked myself countless times if she had ever loved us enough, or if she had been preparing for this escape long before we noticed the signs. I wondered if all those years of family dinners and shared memories had meant less to her than they did to us. And every time I searched for an answer, I was left with the same emptiness. The truth she revealed that night didn't just break my parents' marriage. It broke something inside of me too. It changed the way I looked at loyalty, the way I trusted words, the way I believed in permanence. Infidelity wasn't just about two people, it rippled outward, touching every part of the family, leaving scars on those who never had a choice in the matter. Even now, I replay that moment in my mind, wondering how different life could have been if she had stayed silent, if she had chosen to keep her secret instead of turning it into our reality. But she didn't. She gave us her truth as if it were a gift, when in reality it was the one thing that destroyed the life we had built. One surprise, one confession, and everything was gone. My father would never be the same. I would never be the same. And though she may have found her version of happiness, she left behind a family that could never recover. That night taught me something I will never forget. Betrayal doesn't just break promises, it rewrites the entire story of who you thought you were. Word count 772 white heavy check mark. Would you like me to now create a short, gripping YouTube-style title and description for the full 3-part story to package it perfectly for your faceless video? Time moved forward, but the damage stayed with us like a scar that refused to fade. My father tried to rebuild, but the cracks in him were permanent. He poured himself into work, staying longer hours, avoiding the house as if the silence inside was too much to carry. When he was home, he often sat by the window staring outside, lost in thoughts he never shared. I wanted to ask him what he was thinking, but I already knew the answer. He was replaying years of a marriage that ended in betrayal, questioning if anything he gave had ever been enough for me. The hardest part wasn't the divorce papers or even my mother leaving, it was learning to live with the memories. I couldn't forget the sound of her confession, the look in my father's eyes when he realized the truth, or the weight of betrayal that seeped into every corner of our home. Those moments replayed in my mind like a film I couldn't turn off. Even in quiet moments, they returned without warning, reminding me how fragile trust really is. My mother tried to reach out, but every attempt only deepened the divide. She would send messages, asking me to meet her for coffee, telling me she missed me, reminding me she was still my mother. I ignored most of them. When I did respond, the conversations felt forced, like we were two strangers trying to hold on to something that no longer existed. She wanted me to accept her new life with Michael, but I couldn't. To me, it wasn't just a new life, it was the life she chose over us. Michael, once a familiar presence, became a symbol of everything we lost. I saw him at the grocery store once, standing beside her, his hand casually holding hers. The sight made me freeze, anger boiling in my chest, but I walked away without saying a word. What could I say that would change anything? The damage was done. He had taken his place in her story, and no matter how much I hated it, I couldn't erase it. The community around us whispered, though never to our faces. People who once admired our family now looked at us with pity. They tried to be kind, but I could feel the questions in their eyes. How could this happen? How could a family that seemed so strong collapse so quickly? The truth was simple. It only takes one choice, one betrayal, one secret exposed to unravel everything. With time, my father tried to heal. He attended counseling, not because he believed it would fix what was broken, but because he needed a place to release the pain he refused to show me. He told me once, in a rare moment of openness, that betrayal wasn't just about losing a partner, it was about losing the life you thought you had. He said the hardest part wasn't her leaving, but realizing the years he devoted to her had ended in deception. Those words stayed with me, echoing the reality I was also carrying. I tried to focus on my own future, but even there, her choices followed me. Relationships felt impossible. Whenever someone showed me affection, I questioned their motives, wondering if their words would one day turn into lies. I pushed people away before they had the chance to get close, protecting myself from the kind of pain I had watched my father endure. Trust, once natural, became something I couldn't give easily, if at all. My mother insisted I would understand one day that love was complicated, that adults made choices children couldn't comprehend. But I wasn't a child anymore, and her reasoning only sounded like excuses. I didn't need to be older to see the truth. She had betrayed her husband, her family, and the very foundation we had all relied on. That wasn't complicated, it was selfish. The years passed, but the distance remained. My father built a quieter life for himself, one where peace mattered more than companionship. He never remarried, never sought out new love. He told me once that he couldn't bring himself to open his heart again, because the risk of being broken twice was too great. My mother, on the other hand, built her life with Michael, as if nothing had been lost. Maybe she found the happiness she was searching for, but the cost was a family that would never look at her the same again. Looking back, I realized the surprise she gave us that night didn't just change our family, it erased it. The family I once knew no longer existed, replaced by fragments and separate lives that would never fully connect again. Infidelity wasn't just a choice she made for herself, it was a choice that rewrote our story entirely. It taught me how fragile bonds can be, how one person's desire can destroy years of trust in a single moment. Even now, I struggle to define what family means. The word feels heavy, uncertain, tainted by memories of betrayal. But I carry one truth with me everywhere I go: once trust is broken, it can never return the same. My mother gave us her truth as if it were a confession that could set her free. But it didn't free us. It chained us to a memory we will never escape. One night, one truth, and nothing was ever the same. Word count 770 white heavy checkmark. Do you also want me to craft a final unified title and description for the 4-section story to perfectly frame it as a complete faceless YouTube video?